How are you moving America forward?
Welcome to Moving America Forward, the series that celebrates the achievements and contributions of businesses and entrepreneurs across America. I'm your host, Tom Hegna. Today we're putting the spotlight where it belongs, on the fearless, innovative leaders who are building empires, breaking barriers, and driving real change in communities from coast to coast. These are the founders, the visionaries, the job creators who aren't just participating in the American economy, they're reshaping it. Every episode, we sit down with remarkable men and women who have turned their ideas into impact, hear their stories of resilience and triumph, and uncover the practical insights that can help the next generation rise. If you're out there with a dream, a business, or a bold idea, this is your show. I'm excited to announce today's guests. We got Brian Moon and Mubashir Subhani. Brian and Subhani are both wealth managers for Toro Bravo Investment Advisors. Brian is also the Chief Compliance Officer. Subhani is the Chief Research Officer. They're both retirement income certified professionals, both registered Social Security advisors, are both certified fiduciaries. They've won an award, the Better Business Bureau's Torch Ethics Award. And Brian is one of the top 8 finalists for Advisor of the Year from Investment News. So welcome, gentlemen, to the show today.
Well, thank you, Tom.
My first question is, how are you moving America forward?
Tom, we believe very strongly in having sustainable and good retirement lifestyle for our clients. So we're very focused on those in retirement, and we believe that we want them to be able to retire and enjoy it without the worries and the stress that normally comes along with that.
Yeah, too often Wall Street says for retirees to spend less whenever a market downturn happens, but that's just craziness. If you're managing risk the right way, you've got the right investments, you can spend without a concern.
So I know a little bit about you, but our viewers don't. So how did you get to where you are today?
I've been actually in the business, almost 30 years. I started with life insurance, selling just life insurance, and then I went to work for a large firm in 2000, became a registered rep, they called them back then, I've seen the dot-com crash. I've seen the Twin Towers go down. I watched people's money get decimated in that downturn. I've also seen the financial meltdown of 2008. And then on the good side, I've seen that really incredibly long bull market that we had, and now the AI trade, COVID. So when somebody seeks our advice, I've been through the ringer and the good and bad as far as the markets and investing is concerned. And I've probably done just about every type of investment that there is to do, and I've seen the good and bad in that as well.
Yeah, and then I've been fortunate that back at Texas Tech, Brian was managing my dad's retirement account. I worked with Brian for about 2 years during that. Went and interned at a few big banks, tech startups, but then I decided that's really time to be independent, to do the best thing for clients, and now it's been a really fun 10 years working with Brian.
So, clients think that retirement planning is very complex. What are some of your core philosophies, and how do you simplify it for clients?
It can become complex, but it also can be simple. The problem is getting over FOMO, fear of missing out. When you're in retirement, can you instead focus on what makes my retirement sustainable and what gives me the income that I need to live on? And really, we believe in focusing on dividends and interest in retirement. There's some room for growth, but too often when you go for growth, what happens is you are selling shares for income. And you have to hope the shares that you're selling are going up in value, because when they don't, you have a serious chance of running out of money at some point in the future. So then it's a matter of, are you going to live too long and run out of money, or are you going to be able to sustain your retirement through the rest of your life? So when we look at what our clients are asking us to help them do, we're keeping those big picture things in mind. So often in this business, and the way I started, it was pitch an investment, get a commission. That's the way we did it. Now we're looking at the big picture, what your retirement plan is, and that's why we do Social Security. We look at basing your income, how much base income do you need, then can we grow after that. So these are the things that we're helping our clients with, because this is proven. It's not just this is what we do, but this has been proven to have a more sustainable chance of retiring. And I talk up a lot about this in my book that I think we're going to visit about later.
Yeah, too often when people go to an advisor's office, after the meeting they get slapped down with a 150-page report that no one's going to read. No one's going to read that. And so we like to simplify the process where we're asking you questions about, hey, how much would you like to be able to spend? So that's a retirement income report that really puts together all of your part-time work, your portfolio income, Social Security, all of these other things, and rent revenues that come into play to see whether or not you're on track to be able to safely spend in retirement what you would like to. Then there's a retirement stress test, which really is seeing, hey, if another 2008 hits, are you actually safe? And a lot of people are unfortunately surprised by the answer they get on that, and they're not really making the returns that justify having that kind of risk. And then finally, there's a Social Security optimization report, which shows basically how much you should be able to get over a lifetime and making the best decision to get what you really deserve on those.
Well, let's dig into that a little more, because you're both RSSAs, which is Registered Social Security Analysts. Why is that so important in what you do with your clients?
Well, in the old days, people would come to me with their Social Security questions, because believe it or not, when somebody thinks about retiring, they think about Social Security first before they think about their IRAs and all their other things. When should I file for Social Security? And you think, well, that's not too hard, run down there and get it. Even the people at Social Security don't know how it works exactly. And so what happens is it just takes a few mistakes to lose, according to one study, it said you can lose $111,000 in benefits if you don't do it right. If that's the average, there are people that are losing a lot in benefits. So we got, admittedly, I got the designation during COVID. Didn't have much to do, we're stuck in our office, but I didn't realize how much I didn't know about Social Security. So for our clients who are coming in, they're over 50, they're looking at starting retirement, we can give them good, solid advice on when to file, and some of the other issues in your family that might change, because you think that there's one answer. There's really not. There's a lot of different moving parts that can change your Social Security benefits.
And a lot of these seniors now have children too that are minors, and that can impact on the Social Security as well.
I give you an example. We had a client that wanted to retire early, but you take a 30% drop just from your full retirement age, and then a 76 drop if not waiting to 70. However, when we ran the report, because of the kids, he could get a check on each kid, a child and care check for his wife. As it turns out, he would do better filing at 62. Now, the other part of that is, are you ready to not work too much? Because if you make too much money, they take it back. But in his case, that was probably going to be the situation. So, the advice changes with each individual, and you would think that there's not that variation, but it can be a huge variation when you go to look at filing for Social Security.
Yeah, and really, a lot of people don't realize just how big the benefits can be. If you look at it for the average person, it's over $300,000. And for some clients, it can be over $2 million worth of benefits. So it's definitely worth it to make sure you're getting the right advice on that. But moreover, there's so many different kinds of people out there. When you look at divorced people, when you look at widows, they all have different situations, but they're not getting the right kind of advice for their situation and when they should really take it.
Now, Brian, you've got a book, The Ultimate Retirement Guide, and in there you say you should retire like you're on Apollo 13. What do you mean by that?
Well, first off, of course, my last name's Moon, right? I'm a fan of NASA, always have been. And weirdly enough, I watched Apollo 13 30 times, mostly during the 2009 market crisis, because I didn't want to watch the financial news. But what's interesting, I saw a lot of parallels with Apollo 13 and retirement planning. You know, sometimes things don't go right. A market crash could be your exploding oxygen tank. You know, there's things that can happen. So I use the Apollo 13 mission as an illustrative device to talk about retirement planning. So, you know, I talk about all the normal things you hear about retirement planning in the book, but I compare it to Apollo 13 just to make it interesting.
Now, Subhani, you got a book that's going to be coming out. Tell me a little bit about what we're going to get from that.
Yeah, so it's called Check Your Retirement Tires, and I actually want to personally thank you because it was really inspired by one of the videos where you talked about when you are headed out on a long trip, you want to make sure that you have enough gas in the car, you have enough pressure in the tires, and really retirement is the same way. We're the number one worry that Americans have is about getting income, but there's other topics in there too. So that's basically about tackling taxes, make sure that you can reduce your taxes either right now or in retirement. Then you want to increase your income, you want to reduce your risk. There's the estate experience of making sure assets pass on safely. And finally, Social Security strategies. There were 18 different risks in the Retirement Income Certified Professional Program, and I thought that's too dang much. We'll talk about 5 and work on those. So it's about hitting the main concerns that retirees have and making sure that they're having a fun retirement, which is a lot of the work that you focus on.
So you both talk a lot about cash flow and the importance of income. Why is income so important for retirees?
Oh, absolutely, because what's the option? So often you have these investments, I won't say what they are, and you need to sell shares for income. Well, selling shares means you better hope that the shares went up in value. Because if it went down in value, you're selling cheap, and that sets you up a risk of running out of money in retirement if that happens too often. There's even a scientific term called sequence of returns risk, and that just magnifies when you are taking money from your retirement. And so some of the curriculums on financial planning says to have a upper and lower income level, drop your income, possibly drop your income to zero during market crashes. And I don't think that's the way most people want to live. And frankly, if you retired in 2000, there was a 13-year period of no growth in the market. So if you were 65, you were 78 when it was finally over. And so that was your best, healthiest years that you lost because you were afraid to sell any of your investments because you might just lose all the money, because you're talking about 50% downside, from the markets. So if you look instead, that same time period, if you had a dividend portfolio, and I'm going to assume that you had the same wild S&P 500 volatility, which would be crazy, but you had cash flow, dividends, instead of selling shares. If you look at the math, you have the same amount at the end that you started with. Because you weren't selling shares, you were instead collecting income from the investments. Now, I'd like to say that's easy to do. It's really not. There's a lot of things to look at. You might have to give up a little growth to get stability. But frankly, when you start focusing on dividends and interest can come from a variety of different things, suddenly you put sustainability in your retirement. You might still have some volatility, because if you're in the stock market, there's always volatility, but you also make sure that you have a better chance of living on this money. And if you could get through a time period like 2000 to 2012 with the same money and, let's say, $480,000 of income if you're doing the 4%, I think that's a pretty good situation to have.
Yeah. Cash flow investing is so critical because a lot of it goes back to what you talk about, which is why do people retire? Well, they want to be able to spend. They want to go on cruises that you were talking about. That sounded like a lot of fun, Tom, going to Barcelona and Athens. But doing all these fun things really takes cash flow. And one thing that really resonated with me was in the Retirement Income Certified Professional Program, a couple of the advisors and professors talked about how humans aren't machines. You know, just because your advisor says, hey, can you spend 15% less this year because the market's down? No, really what that means is what the client hears, and rightfully so, is you got to give less money to the grandkids. You can't go out on vacation. So that's really not an acceptable outcome to us. We want to make sure.
Less golf, less ladies' lunches.
Absolutely.
Less lifestyle.
So that's why having cash flow in retirement is so critical. And a lot of people have been chasing the big growth in tech stocks, and God bless them. But sometimes it's time to take the chips off the table and then start income investing to make sure that you don't have to worry in retirement. And funny study that Brian pointed out was people with basically certain income in retirement, they really are much happier and they live longer. Why? Because they're less stressed. It's like those people that you see at casinos where they blow all their money, but they still have a smile on their face. Why? Because, oh, I have a pension. I'll be all right. I have a next check coming in, you know? So we're not saying that we're gambling at all. We have safe investments for our clients, but we need to make sure that you have income in retirement.
Now, emotions and psychology come into play. I call it psychonomics versus economics. Tell me how you deal with some of those issues.
Yeah, that's tough because FOMO is probably the biggest retirement killer out there, because what happens is you see that the markets have done really good. I mean, they're at 15, 17, 25%. Like right now, the AI trade is just taking off. And then you're thinking, why am I not in that? I'm losing out. Matter of fact, I'm not going to have enough because I'm not getting those kind of returns. Of course, it always ends badly. We see it in history. It's not like you have to make it up. It's like, look at the history. You know, you end up with these huge crashes. The AI trade, I'd like to comment, this is looking a lot like 2000 to me. You know, in the build-up, if we remember, Y2K, we had to buy new computers because when Y2K hit, everything was going to shut off because it couldn't deal with the date change. So every corporation went from mainframes and mini computers to desktops that were networked. And they bought so much that these technology companies shot up and were just worth so much because their earnings were huge. And then, of course, the dot-coms were never really worth anything, but, you know, they carried along with that. 2000 rolls around, everyone stopped spending. Now, hard, because, okay, the danger's over. And then companies started looking at their budgets, saying, we don't need to buy this anymore. And then we saw the tech crash happen. And of course, when there's one crash, something else usually happens shortly after. I see the AI trade the same way. We're building data centers like there's nobody's business, like there's, you know, we don't have enough of them. But when does that end? And what does that do to these companies that are showing massive earnings? Because why? Because we're building data centers. If you are in retirement, you can't wait around for the recovery. If you're in an accumulation phase where you're building, if it takes you 10 years to come back, you'll be fine. You know, matter of fact, maybe you bought at cheap prices. But when you're retired, you need this money now. And by the way, what if you have a big health issue that you need to pull $50,000, $100,000 for, and your portfolio's down 50% because something unexpected, and trust me, it's always unexpected, happened. And so that's why we feel that people need to focus on income and cash flow investing and be careful of FOMO, saying, I've got to get in on the growth or, you know, I'm not as good as my neighbor.
Yeah, I mean, aside from the numbers of the market going down by more than a third, 4 times in the past 30 years, that's something a lot of people forget. I really appreciate Brian's book, The Ultimate Retirement Planning Guide, Retire Like You're on Apollo 13, because it's an illustration for where the astronauts had to be huddled, cold, and alone in the dark, waiting to try and have enough power before the parachutes deployed. And that's really kind of the same thing with retirees, where if they don't have enough income, what happens? They're going to be cold, dark, and alone, not being able to get to where they want to go, not being able to go to golf, ladies' lunch, giving gifts to grandkids, traveling, doing all the fun things that they wanted to in retirement. So that's why we do focus so much on income and making sure that we tamp down on that risk for our clients.
Let's talk about taxes for a while, because taxes could be the number one thing that people spend money on in retirement. It could be their number one expenditure. How are you working to help minimize those?
Yeah, that's been a development for us. I talk about it in my book, Chapter 5, about taxes. And you know, sometimes we focus so much on those market returns on our portfolio, but what if you could save $3, $4, $10, $15,000 in taxes? You know, just by changing where you're taking your money from. On Apollo 13, at the end, they had to sequence their power because they didn't have much left. And so they had to turn some things on, not turn on other things. So because you got to remember, if they didn't have enough power for the parachutes, it was all for naught. Just because they got back in Earth's atmosphere doesn't mean they were going to survive. And same with most of our clients. If you don't have enough income or money at the end of retirement, you know, where are you at? You're with your kids. You're in a bad nursing home. I mean, what's happening here? So, you know, those are things we look at as taxes. Can we help add some more income? And, you know, think about it. A $3,000 tax saving is a cruise. You know, you go on a cruise because, you know, your advisor helped you with figuring out your income. And we believe that you kind of need your financial advisor in on this, because your CPA just tells you the bad news. You know, it's like, you know, you go to your CPA and say, here it is, and he says, yeah, you should have done something else, and then you would have saved some taxes. And so we have software. We spend, what is it, like $3,000 or $4,000 a year, and we're a smaller firm, on software that models your tax return so that we can know where you should be taking your money from, whether you should be doing Roth conversions, you know, there's all kinds of different things. And one thing, and it bugs the living daylights out of me, when somebody brings their statement, they're in retirement and they got tax-free bonds. And they're like, well, the interest is tax-free, but not to your Social Security. It's taxing your Social Security. And a lot of people don't realize that, you know, or their tax rate isn't high enough to justify, because tax-free bonds also pay less than other types of income and investments. So, you know, having somebody that understands this helps you make good decisions, so that because we don't do anyone's taxes. We want them to have a good relationship with their CPA or tax preparer. But when they bring their information there, they've optimized as best as they could.
So what are some of the other mistakes that you see people doing in retirement?
I like to refer back to the acronym of check your retirement tires. Most often, people are paying too much in taxes. There's lots of ways to go about reducing that. Number two, they're having to worry their head off about not getting their income, or if a market downturn hits, not getting enough. That's not an acceptable outcome to us. Come talk to us about how you can stabilize your income and get more. Number three, how are you going to reduce risk? I mean, Brian talked a lot about the AI trade, and I agree, it's kind of looking like a strange combination of the 2000s and 2008, where companies are real expensive, and unless you're working with the right advisor, you don't know where to go safely to bring down that risk, but also still get good returns. Estate, a lot of people have lost out. You know, the guy who played Tony Soprano, Gandolfini, guess what percentage he paid in taxes because he didn't do his trust the right way? 55% is what he gave to the government. If he was a real mobster, maybe he wouldn't have had to. But so he ended up forking out a lot to the government that he didn't need to, and finally Social Security, where you need to figure out the right way to maximize benefits in your situation.
So a lot of people that are not using life insurance, are not using long-term care insurance, they're not using annuities. What are your opinions on where those products might fit in retirement?
Well, You know, there's something about, you talk about mortality credits, you talk about guarantees and safety, and these things can provide that. Now, what they won't provide is fantastic growth, you know, but again, that's where you got to get rid of your FOMO, because it might cause you to change your retirement plans or cause your assets to be destroyed. These things can't, these life insurance, we don't do so much long-term care because it's so expensive, but life insurance can sometimes replace long-term care. You know, there's a lot of strategies out there. Nothing is right for one person, but might be right for others. And so these things can help balance. In the RICP and the CFP curriculums, there's a concept of basing. And one of the reasons, what it says is, what's your base income that you absolutely need to get through retirement? And so part of that base is going to be Social Security, obviously, but then can your investments and some of these other guaranteed investments assure you that the rest of your base is taken care of? Once you've got your base, if you want to be a little aggressive on the rest, there's nothing stopping you, because even if it goes down in value, you still covered your nut, what you need for retirement. And so these things can actually help you if you want to be a little bit more aggressive and jump in on an AI trade or something like that, because you've already covered what you need for retirement income, what you and your wife need to live the life that you want.
Yeah, guaranteed income is a great foundation, and then you build upon that.
Yeah, I'm going to start some beef with Dave Ramsey right now. I'm kidding. So, unfortunately, we've all seen the crazy videos out there of life insurance can solve everything about your financial worries. That's not the case. However, we have a lot of clients where they're using it as a smart tool to pay taxes now and never have to pay taxes later. And really, tying that into long-term care, one of our clients, he's doing several $100,000 a year that he's putting into that to do a few things.
Into
Number
a life
one,
insurance policy, yeah.
to take down his RMDs. Number two, what he's ensuring is that if he needs that for long-term care later, that's a great pool to basically take a tax-free loan to yourself, and now you're not having to raid your qualified or retirement assets that bump up your tax bill by a lot, because nursing home costs now can be over $100,000, $200,000 a year for one individual for 3 to 5 years. So you do that for a couple, and suddenly you look at $1 million bill that you didn't expect. And so in the Retirement Income Certified Professional curriculum, I really liked one section where there's this advisor who focuses only on long-term care. And she said, I like to start out my client meetings by asking, hey, what's your long-term care plan? And most people say, I don't have one. And she said, false. You're actually going to be a burden to your kids. How do you feel about that? And so, yeah, those are surprise bills people don't think about. There's medical expenses. And a lot of people are having to retire earlier than expected. So some people might think, oh, we're 5-10 years out. Why come talk to you guys now? Well, that's because you might have to retire 5 to 10 years earlier than you think, as about half of the people have to do because of medical concerns or having to take care of parents. And so these are just some of the ways that life insurance can help. But then annuities really are the most efficient way to maximize the income. You take that risk off entirely to the carrier or bring it down, and then you're getting way more income than you could really take out from normal portfolios.
Yeah, and I think life insurance can play a key role in legacy too. That you know, too many people are trying to leave money to their kids, and I say, don't leave any money to your kids. Spend your money, leave them life insurance, because you can do that for pennies on the dollar. So look, this has been great. I think there are going to be some people that want to get in contact with you. How's the best way they can contact you?
Well, man, we're trying to be on the internet pretty hard. So we have a Facebook page, Toro Bravo Advisors. If you look for that, you'll find our Facebook page. A lot of videos of us. We have a podcast on YouTube that you can, again, Toro Bravo Advisors. TX, I think you can find us on there. We obviously have a web page, ToroBravoAdvisors.com, and you can also call us on our phone number, 806-359-7766.
And then also be sure to check out Amazon for our books, Check Your Retirement Tires, from me, and then from Brian Moon, my best friend business partner. There's the Ultimate Retirement Planning Guide, lessons from Apollo 13 or retire like you're on Apollo 13.
Oh, and the last thing, we do have a radio show. If you want to listen to us, now it's an Amarillo based. So if you look for News Talk, AM 940, we're on Saturday morning at 8 and 10 and Sunday morning at 10. And anyone in the country can, go to do News Talk Amarillo. They can find us on there and listen to us for an hour on Saturday and Sunday morning.
Well, thank you both for joining us today. You are definitely moving America forward. And I want to thank all of you for watching another episode of Moving America Forward. How are you moving America forward?